I had a front row seat for my grandfather's death on Alzheimer's, and I was the family caregiver for my mother, and I was there when she died. And people have a misperception of the stereotypes of Alzheimer's. They think it's the end stage when you're in a hospital and you're 2 months away from dying. There are millions of people walking around like me. You just saw the movie Still Alice, Alice Howland, the fictional character, but she's wholly accurate. She's a professor at Harvard, and they're trying to struggle through life. In my case, 60% of my short-term memory can be gone in 30 seconds. There are times when I don't recognize familiar people, including my wife on 2 occasions. There are times when I don't recognize where I am. I pick a phone up and I don't remember how to dial and get so angry I throw it across the room. Or in the summertime, should summer ever come again, I pick my lawn sprinkler up and not know what it does. Or I go into tremendous rage. And then there are what people call the misperceptions, which are the hallucinations, seeing things that aren't there. And it's very difficult to talk about it because I decided to strip myself naked. I was there with my mother when she died, and I said, you know what? This is going to stop. We're going to start talking about this in more personal terms. As a journalist, I felt I had no choice. It was, you know, I've covered a lot of big stories in my life, and yet this was the biggest story I may write about.
Let me ask you about how you deal with those moments of off-centeredness. That phrase doesn't do it justice, but the sort of moments you were talking about a minute ago. If you, say, pick up a phone and can't remember how to dial it, or if you happen to wake up next to your wife and for a moment you can't place her as your wife, how do you respond in the moment?
You respond in the moment in anger because there's something inside you that tells you you should know better and you can't get at it. And you're angry because you should know better and you don't know what else to do but to strike out in rage. And sometimes you cry. And it's a total loss of self. It's a death in slow motion. It's like having a sliver of your brain shaved every day. You get up in the morning and you're not quite sure who's going to show up, but you have to keep pressing on. And God has given all of us different levels of fight, and shame on me for not fighting at the level that I can fight at.
How do you strike the right balance between fighting against what you're going through and accepting it as something that you're not going to be able ultimately to beat? How do you find that balance?
Well, I'm a runner, and I run outside, I run on the treadmill. And I've drawn the analogy in this disease as running a race against Alzheimer's. And on the treadmill, at one point, I'm 64 years old, and when I was 62, I got my mile down to 5 minutes and 30 seconds. And that was out of clear rage and running against Alzheimer's. To answer your question, I know there's a time when it's going to overtake me. So I don't look back, I look forward, but it's being chased by the boogeyman, and I can see the progression. I know in a few years in the future that I won't be who I am, and in many ways I'm not today who I was.
I wanted to ask you about that. That's another question that's posed in your book, which seems to me like a huge question, is that the extent to which the self or the soul, whatever term you want to use, remains when someone is, as you put it, having a sort of a sliver of their brain sliced away again and again and again. Do you feel like you're the same person you were 10 years ago?
No. In some ways, I'm a better person. I've lost something and I've gained something. I'm not here to proselytize with you. I was raised Irish Catholic, a third-generation Irish American. Sometimes I go to an evangelical church, but don't tell my relatives in Dublin because they'd stone me. I have a strong faith in God, and anything that I do right now is because of that. And I believe that there's a journey from the mind to the heart, that when we die, what is left behind is our soul, and that doesn't change. And I would tell my mother in her Alzheimer's, I would point to her heart and say, you know, Mom, that little girl who grew up in the east side of Manhattan, who was the mother of 10 children, that woman is still alive in your heart. She hasn't gone. And when we leave this world, we leave behind our soul. And there is a journey, I believe, that you take from the cradle to the grave, and you reach the place of that heart. And often, if in Alzheimer's, it forces you to find that place of the heart because you can't find it in your mind.
What is the most important thing you can tell people who do not have Alzheimer's about interacting with people who do? What should we know?
First of all, the most important thing are love and touch. Try to reach someone in the heart. Try to tell someone that you love them. Try to tell them that you love them unconditionally. Don't correct them. There may be times when you have to guide them, but don't correct them in a way like a teacher would correct a second grade student. Because what happens is that there's a total loss of self-esteem with people with Alzheimer's from the early stage to the end stage. Often we know better. And when someone is correcting us, it just reinforces the fact that we're losing our identity, losing ourself, and we get angry. And so do it in love and have that relationship. And talk to people. And touch is so important, whether it's a touch on a shoulder or a touch on a hand. It's just that energy from one person to the next that tells you that that person loves you and that person's there for you. That reinforcement is so important in Alzheimer's.
And I got the impression reading your book that you think it's really important for society as a whole to not shy away from talking openly about Alzheimer's.
We need to make Alzheimer's popular. Alzheimer's is the umbrella word for Alzheimer's is dementia. It has a Latin root of a demon screaming in the woods. Still Alice, written by the wonderful novel written by Lisa Genova, is a good friend. She wrote the foreword to my book. Julianne Moore just won the Academy Award for Best Actress. Did a tremendous job in bringing that to the point of having people understand what real Alzheimer's is. And I just lost my place.
Well, you were telling me before we started.
And you know what
the
that, and it's okay to, if you want to stay on camera with that, a million times when I'm talking, I lose my place. What it is, Alzheimer's is like a plug, a loose plug in a socket. And maybe this is a good thing that this happened. You ever want to read a book and you put the plug in the socket and the light blinks, and then you push the plug back in and it blinks again, you push the plug back in. Over time the plug falls out, it's so loose, you put it back in, falls out, put it back in. Pretty soon it's so loose it can't stay in the plug, the light goes out forever. And it's that signal, and I just lost it.
But then it'll come back, right? Because now I'm going to tell you that you were making the point before the camera was rolling that that movie was great, but you don't want it to create a sense of complacency. You don't want it to make people think, okay, we're on top of this.
I think it's extraordinary. I was cheering as loud as anyone else when Juliana won the Oscar. I was cheering for Lisa, I was cheering for Juliana, I was cheering for Maria Shriver. The discussion on Alzheimer's needs to go well beyond a worthy Academy Award. This was an extraordinary film. It opened the door worldwide to a conversation. Now we have to continue that conversation. We have to make Alzheimer's popular. There are millions of people who are still Alice's, who are walking around with the day-to-day symptoms. I am an Alice without a dress. And every day we have to fight against these symptoms. We need to push the Congress to take this seriously. We need to push, we need to get people worldwide to start to talk about this, because nobody wants to talk about dementia. It's a scary, scary word. So there's a sense of urgency in me and a sense of urgency with others who have Alzheimer's, and we need to make Alzheimer's need to make Alzheimer's popular, and we need to start to listen to these people. My book on Pluto goes beyond Alzheimer's. It's about raising the level of fight in people. Walter Payton, when there was at a time when he was close to his end of his career, and an announcer said, Walter Payton has run for more than 9 miles. And someone said, yeah, but that's after getting knocked down every 4.6 yards and getting back up again. And that's what it's like about life, and that's what it's like about Alzheimer's. Lying down in football as it is in wrestling as a position of defeat.